Christina here, and holy moly, it is December already. So I have for you a pile of books here I want to share that we read last month, November 2020. Both personally, I read, my kids read, our family listened to, but also for school because we homeschool. If you're new here, we have 5 children between the ages of 4 and 13. So I'm going to jump right in with what we read. So I think I mentioned that we were almost done this one at the end of last update. This is The Singing Tree by Kate Sarady. And I haven't read the first book because this is actually a sequel, but reading it just on its own was really good. It worked out fine, and I really like the story. I feel like a lot of the stories that take place during World War I, at least that I've read and I've had exposure to, are ones that take place in Britain, France, Germany, Canada, and this one, it was different. It was in Hungary, but it also talked about children in Germany, as well as Russian prisoners of war. But it's all really child-friendly, really well written, really good description. So this was definitely a winner for me. I like this book a lot. Then we moved on to this book, The Story of Edith Cavell. Cavell, not sure how you say that. This is a level 7 with the Good and the Beautiful library. And this was a really good book too. I enjoyed this one quite a bit, and so did my kids. I had never heard of her before, which after we read this book, in the back it talks about how there's a lot of monuments to her throughout the world, and I actually looked it up, and we have one here in Alberta up in Jasper. So I didn't even know that. There's a mountain named after her. So this was a really good story. It's about an English nurse who is in Belgium during the occupation in World War I, and she helps with the resistance, and she ends up getting caught, and she actually does get executed. But it talks a lot about her growing up and just her philosophies on work and on life, and it was a good story. I really enjoyed this one. And then it just so happened that our study of World War I in our Story of the World, which we use, aligned with Remembrance Day and in November. And so the next book we read was Truce by Jim Murphy. I'll show you this. This is a scholastic one. And so it talks a bit about the war, kind of the beginning within that first year. There's a lot of photographs and drawings, kind of ending near where it talks about during the Christmas of 1914 and how the truce happened informally in different areas and how people came out and celebrated Christmas together. But what was interesting to me about this book was that it went into a lot more description than kind of stories I've heard before, as well as pictures of certain places along the Western Front. It also talked about some that actually lasted a lot longer and how people higher up in both armies were really dissuading or trying to dissuade people from doing this because it humanized people they were supposed to be killing, honestly. So I did enjoy this book. It was a good one. And then we did this one here, the Usborne First World War. And I shared before when I first bought this book. But this book was fantastic as it went through the date and the sequence leading up to the war, what happened after the war, and I learned a lot about it actually that I didn't know. So this was a really, really good book. I highly recommend investing in one of these. I liked it. So those were our read-alouds for November. For Audible or for audiobooks, we listened to Breaking Stalin's Nose. And this was an interesting book. It really did show very well kind of life under communist rule, what life was like at that time in the Soviet Union, the way of thinking, the fear, just the whole kind of way society was. But it was an odd story. I'm not sure I really liked it. I don't think I would do it again for like a listening book or even a read aloud. Perhaps an independent read for an older child who just kind of, you want them to understand what life was like at that time under Stalin, but the story itself wasn't my favorite. Just wasn't. So then moving on to my kids. So my 13-year-old, he read Sagebrush Surgeon by Florence Cranell Means. This is a level 11 with the Good and the Beautiful library. No pictures in there. So that's the one he read. He's a big Percy Jackson fan. Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the Demigod Files. He read this one, which I think it's Jurassic Park, isn't it? Yes, it's Jurassic Park. There's nothing on there. Oh, there it is. he loves to read, so this is nothing for him. He's read this many times. This is a copy he bought himself. He read The House of Hades. This is another one that he really enjoys. Again, a big book. He also read, all my boys read a lot of comic books, Pokemon Go, and lots of other random books. Then how old is he now? He's 11. He read The Lost Kingdom. This is level 7 from the Good and the Beautiful library. This is one we're actually going to be reading soon as well, and he said he enjoyed it. Then he read a whole bunch of Ronald Dahl books. So George's Marvelous Medicine, The Witches, The Twits, Fantastic Mr. Fox, James and the Giant Peach, Esiochot, I think that's how you say that, and Matilda, of which actually I have read none of these books. I have not read a single one. So you can tell he was on a kick for Ronald Dahl this month. My 10-year-old, he read Mr. Broom's Wonderful One-Acre Farm by Sid Fleshman. We really like Sid Fleshman. He's a great author. It's just a short little book, and he really enjoyed that. I ended up ordering some more from the library for him, which hopefully he'll be reading soon. And then he has also started reading Rick Riordan. So he read Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and he read The Last Olympian, and I have a feeling he read one of the other ones, maybe the Demigod one as well, because he has really gotten into those books lately. And then the only independent read I had my 3 oldest boys do this month was Who Was Gandhi, to go along with our story of the world. And that brings me to my daughter, who is 7. If you saw my last video, or almost last video, we got a whole bunch of readers from the Good and the Beautiful. This is box C and box D. She read all of them multiple times. She loved them, and I love them. I think they are just so beautiful. Like, gorgeous, gorgeous pictures. I could go on and on about these books because they're so nice. And so many great books. So she read all those, and then she also read A Wolf in the North Woods, which is a level 2 from the Good and the Beautiful. And I've shared this book before. She's read it before. It's basically teaching a child about wolves and kind of about their life, but in a fun little story that's simple with pictures. And she read a whole bunch of other books. She gets lots of early readers from the library, some early chapter books, and that sort of thing. So that brings me to me. So this month I read The Road from Home, the story of an Armenian girl by David Cardian, I think, Cardian. This was really interesting to me. I really enjoyed this book. I didn't know anything about the massacre, basically. I had no idea, and it really hit me when I opened the page, and I'll insert a picture here, to see the 2 quotes. Because I didn't know about it. It was hard to read, it was sad to read, but it was really, really informative, really interesting. So I highly recommend that book. I would say it's good for a teenager to read. Preteen, it might be a little heavy, but there was nothing too graphic until the very end. There's a little bit there. It was a good book. And then I moved on to How to Break Up with Your Phone. I read this book for myself, but more so because I wanted to preview it to have my oldest children read it. They have iPods, they bought themselves, but it's always a struggle with screen time. It just always is. So I actually don't use my phone that much, I don't think. I already have a number of the tips that she shares in her book, like not having just all your icons on your screen, but putting them into files so they're very small and so you're not automatically clicking on them. Having time set up where it's downtime or do not disturb. There are a few things I'm going to institute eventually, slowly change some habits, which was good. So the book gives a lot of information about how having phones and the technology has changed our lives, but more so changed our brains and the function of it, including memory, which I definitely noticed my memory is not as good. And then there's like a 30-day plan. So I didn't do the 30-day plan, but I read through it all. It sounds really great. Lots of good advice. Definitely going to have my kids read it some point in their teenage years, so highly recommend that one. And then I moved on to this book here. This Is Gonna Hurt by Adam Kay. Secret Diaries of a Junior Doctor. And this is really interesting book. It's really funny. It's very sarcastic in some ways, and it's shocking too in a lot of ways. So this is someone who worked for the NHS, the National Health Service in the UK, and he ended up leaving after, I think it was 6 years. And he, as part of his schooling, he kept a journal of what happened each day. And so he puts a bunch of his journal entries together. This is about 10 years, I think, after he left medicine. And there are some swear words. It's definitely sarcastic, but it's really funny too. And it's really eye-opening about what doctors go through and the training there and really around the world. But also, he has these little footnotes at the bottom. Let's see if I can show you. He ended up going into gynecology and obstetrician. So there's these little footnotes that explain certain terms and certain procedures, which I found really interesting. Overall, the book's really interesting. I'm the kind of person who likes medical things. I like medical shows, but I hate talking about these things or going to the doctor, and I was totally fine reading it. So if you want a good laugh and you're okay with some kind of outrages out there and sarcastic and some swearing, read this book. It was good and funny, really funny. So that's the pile of books I have here. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section down below and let me know what you read this month or what you're in the process of reading, because I love getting suggestions. Otherwise, I hope this finds you having a great day. Take care.